Thank you, Gordon, for taking time to be with us, to be part of this experience. Spring Green Dojo has been such a magical place for me. And I knew from the time I set foot on it that it was a very special place in the world. I wonder if you could just start us off by saying a few words around how it came into being. You created it from the ground up. And I know you built it in a way to help people have a different kind of experience of body-mind as they come there. What guided you? What did you do to help create a place of the way like the Spring Green Dojo?
It's hard not to smile seeing your face. You know, this is a day that you would have been here yourself had the COVID allowed. And I'm looking out and it's a clear sun and it's about 8 degrees and there's snow on the ground. And I know you know exactly that feeling of what that's like to train in that kind of environment. So, what did we do coming here? This would have been, 2004, 2005 when we started looking for property, and we wanted an expansive space. We wanted something bigger than any of us could kind of wrap our arms around. It had to be big. And we wanted it without prior buildings. We wanted to give ourselves enough time here in the woods, up high, by the springs, old growth, new growth. What's here? And we wanted to experience different weather patterns. What's it like when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's windy, when it's a blizzard? How does the water run when it rains hard? But in the midst of all that, there was still this sort of sense of me as a teacher coming here to teach, that I sort of felt like I had a bundle of stuff that I had accumulated over the years, and now I wanted a place to teach. And what shifted for me as we were starting to do this evaluation, walking around, feeling this place, different times of day, different seasons, was that, wait a minute. It's like the overwhelming sensation was, Gordon, just get out of the way. This place is the teacher. I am simply the facilitator. I help bring things to the surface so that people can experience them. So as we started to build, as we started to design, as we started to shape how we use the land, all of it was to that end. It's like, how can this stuff open you up? How can this show you what it's like to be connected to everything, to not be separate from anything? Good, bad, it's horrible weather, it's beautiful weather. It's just weather. Are you connected? Let me pause. How are we doing?
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. When you talk about get out of the way, that's the feeling that the place imparts on people, and using our senses in a way that can also be connected. We so often feel we have to make something happen, and yet what you're speaking to is an inversion of that. It's like we get things backwards, and yet somehow we can use our senses to turn them back around, to turn them right way again. Could you say more on that, about how do you use your senses to invert backwards thinking?
Yes, I can speak to technique, but I also want to just speak to the phenomena that to me, one of the tremendous pleasures, right now I'm just looking out of a double set of windows, sort of a corner thing with actually 10 windows, that I'm getting about almost 180-degree panorama of the hillside and a distant hillside and a hedgerow and a meadow. I am so tiny in the face of that, that the first step is simply just, I mean, it's not just get out of your own way. It's just like acknowledge, who you are in the scheme of things. Because in the scheme of things, I'm just this little, four-legged mammal, huddled under some shelter today because it's cold outside. But it's a big world out there. And it's a big world. At the same time, this is one of these wonderful Zen things. It's like, yeah, I'm a speck, but there's ways to open up your senses, open up your breathing, where you just become the whole thing. You just suck it all in. And there isn't this separation or this sense of, well, I'm small or I'm big or it's big and I'm small. It doesn't matter. The barriers start to drop away. And I find it really easy in nature to use my breath, use my posture, use my senses to help drop that barrier, so that there's not a separation between me and what's around me.
It's great. I want to build on that. When you go out into nature, how do you begin? Or I know you well enough to know it's just in you, but I'm looking for something to help others begin with too, to connect with nature. How is it that you can have a different kind of experience in nature than the usual looking out from a sense of self?
I'll describe an experience teaching. And I was doing an online class, like beginning calligraphy. And we weren't using brushes. We were just using big marking pens. And we were using newsprint. So nothing fancy, nothing sophisticated. But what I asked everybody to bring to the online lesson, each person there, bring a branch, go out, find something, ideally without leaves. This is in a time when there weren't leaves, so it could just be a bare branch, something however big you want to fit in your house, and place it on the table in front of you. And now with our big marking pens, we're going to draw it. And let's just, I'm not going to give you any particular instruction, but I'll give you maybe 2 minutes. Just use your pen as best you can. See if you can capture that branch. And so for 2 minutes, that's what people did. And then I said, now we're going to do the same thing, but this time I want you to breathe. I want you to exhale as long as possible while you're drawing that same branch. And we're still going to go 2 minutes, and you probably can't exhale for 2 minutes, but that's all right. Just make your exhales as long as you can, and then steal a breath, and then get right back at it. And it was night and day. That people were placing their two drawings done, just a few minutes apart, side by side, same pen, same person, same paper, same everything, except with one, there was a very focused use of an exhalation. It was, this is a teacher. It's always kind of uncanny or something you're kind of winging it that actually works. I'd never done that particular exercise before with a group of beginners, and it was they themselves. I didn't have to say anything. They could just look at the difference between, this branch they drew and this branch that they drew. Once they've done that, now there becomes a sense in which, now the breath can be a tool. Now this exhalation, it shifts things in some fashion that feels very appropriate, very natural. So then you start to play with it. In what settings can you use a long exhalation?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. In what settings could you not use it? Right? It's one of those tools that's always with you, right? Um, eh, eh, let's play with the senses a little more. And this is, you touch on an example of using them to create, but how can we invert senses or use them to create in the moment, to create a different, I want to say, significance to an encounter?
Yeah. Well, I'll do my best. It's a tough one. It's a tough question, but it's an easy phenomena, but it's a tough question. And to me, the let's go with sound for a moment. Right now I'm hearing some voices from the kitchen. I can't hear their words, but I know they're talking because they're working on some cooking. And under an ordinary way of hearing, I'm just sort of picking up a signal that if my hearing is, if I pay attention, can I hear a little bit more of what they're saying? But there's this notion of I am the receiver of this sound. That's one way, and that's the way I grew up into an adult doing. And what started to shift the longer and longer I trained in Zen was that, well, yeah, that's one way of doing it. But what if I'm not the receiver of that sound? What if I'm creating that sound? Objectively, that's nonsense. I'm not in the kitchen at the moment talking about dough and stuff like that. But there can be a very visceral sense in which, wait a minute, those are sounds that I myself am creating. And for me, this is one of the Ginny flips. This is just one of those inversions that when I do that, everything changes. Now my focus, now my locking in on that is far more. I don't know. We're joined. We're joined to that sound. It's not just incidental in the background. But nor is it a distraction. It's not like, oh, gee, should I be talking to Ginny here or should I be listening to those sounds? It's like, it's multiple tracks. You can do that on dozens of tracks. You don't have to do one or the other. So too many words. But it's the thing, to me, the biggest shift is whatever sounds are going on, somehow, in some mysterious way, I'm the person creating those sounds. That's the shift.
That's right. That's right. And you say it's not it may sound like nonsense, and yet the more I feel into and sense the phenomenon of resonance, it's the absolute truth. You are creating the sound because you're vibrating with it. That's when the energy is entering your body, and that's where the creation, is happening. It's fascinating. You've taught me so much about using this phenomenon for healing and helping people. Could you share a story around that? How can you use this connection, this one witness, this use of the senses to heal?
Oh boy. Well, yeah, we can talk for days. To me, learning to face suffering has been a very defining thread to my life for at least the last, let's just call it 30 or 40 years. Somehow it became part of the beginning of my Zen training, and it's continued through into my work as a chaplain, my work with medical students, my work in medical schools. There's many ways to obviously look at suffering. These days, I see it more than anything as something just grounded in feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling separate. And I have sort of this prototypical image of a child who is, falls down and scrapes their knee. They're roller skating, they scrape their knee, it hurts, maybe they're crying. and their father, their mother, their sister, their aunt, their friend, somebody comes by and just says, they're there. I know it hurts. I know it hurts. And their experience of that pain changes, right? We could say, oh, they feel comforted or this and this, but that doesn't at all adequately describe what just happened. I mean, physiologically, in terms of, cytokines and whatever's going through in the blood and the nerve endings, there's not a whole lot of difference between when they scraped that knee and when somebody wrapped their arms around them and said, they're there. What's happened is that they're no longer alone in the pain. And because they're alone in the pain, the suffering shifts. So, for me, the tool, as I was describing it, I described it walking around my land, the tool for joining into something is primarily through my exhalations. It's through my breath. And so that in a healing environment, to the degree that my exhalations are as long and as slow and as deep as possible, the separation, the gap between me and who's in front of me starts to shrink. And it shrinks and it shrinks and it shrinks. And then sometimes the barrier is just gone. There is no separation. They're no longer alone. Now, again, objectively, whatever is causing their suffering, an abusive husband, deep, depression, all of that stuff may still be there physiologically, neuromuscularly, but now the aloneness isn't there. So what was healed was that sense of being alone with this, and the healing comes through the breath.
Yeah. As we think about the use of this in the broader world, and sometimes in healthcare, what you've just described of just curing the aloneness is exactly what's called for. Sometimes in business, other things are called for. If you think about some of the worlds of people who will be having this, immersion experience, how can these tools, the longer exhale, the use of senses, the being connected, the disappearing of boundary, how can it help them in the difference they're trying to be and make in the world?
Wow. I'm treating that as a very fresh question. I'm not, and so therefore I'm treating it with a very fresh answer. And the answer just is overwhelming. It's like, stop doing what you're doing. Whatever the usual. Professionals, people who are at all successful in whatever range of work they're successful in, they have found their techniques. They have found what they do. They found sort of habits, so they don't have to sort of think their way into troubleshooting, problem solving, creating, generating, leading, all that stuff. That's good. That's fine. Thanks. Some people are gifted at that. Some people less than gifted. Some people are horrible. But anyway. But if you feel yourself in a situation where whatever you got isn't enough, either because circumstances have changed, the world has changed, that whatever it is you usually do, there's just something deep inside you that says, it's just not working. It's just not working. I'm a guy. And in a guy, when we feel like something's not working, the reflex is to try harder. It's like, if I just tried harder, if I just went with 1 hour less sleep, or if I just, made 3 extra phone calls, if I just do more, I'll get through this. And I'm saying, don't. Just back off. Just accept, even if it's just for a fraction of a moment, even if it's just for the duration of one breath, just say, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have found that tremendously liberating for myself in so many circumstances. I'm a smart person. I've survived. I've built, I've earned income by how well I think. I consider that being an intellectual, somebody who brings in income by the quality of their thought. And that's been me. But that's not the only me. That's just the me that has sort of grown up and developed and done this and this. But there's a whole other part of me that recognizes the fallacy of that is always going to be limited, because it's going to be limited to what's inside my own body, my own skill set, my own list of experiences, my own list of credentials. And when I can just say, stop it, stop it, stop it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. That then sort of cracks open what else might be possible.
Wow. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Letting people have a feeling of how to, I want to say, come home to that possibility, to that bigness, to not just being a speck in the enormity, but being the enormity, or opening up to what can be created in that is one of the things that, boy, I would hope for as people even come through this experience. And I'm curious if you have any guidance for people, if we're going to encourage people to go out in nature, to use their senses differently, use their exhale differently, drop in, and maybe develop or pick or select some symbol or practice that will help them remember what that kind of bigness can feel like in them. What guidance might you offer for how someone approaches that exercise? How would you approach it?
Okay. If I was sitting down with you right now and a crowd of people that you were trying to work with, I would have a two-phase thing. One is obviously, yes, get outdoors, go breathe with a bird, go breathe with a tree, go breathe with a sunset. Just freaking breathe with it, okay? And by breathe, I mean emphasis on the exhale, and then you run out of air, take a quick inhale, and just breathe. And so if you play a wind instrument, you know the phenomena. It's harder to make music when you're sucking in air than when you're blowing out air. But if you're blowing out air, you're creating a melody, a sound, a tune, something. So do that. That to me is relatively easy. That's not a really sophisticated skill, although there's no end to the refinement. But just in the spirit of you're describing people in the world and in business, and they're locked in on crises and troubles and stuff, I would imagine some kind of paired up problem solving activity where you got two people and they don't know, but you're going to put a piece of paper in front of each of them that describes in one paragraph a problem to be solved. I'm not going to try and imagine a problem, but just some kind of practical problem in the city government, in the, raising money for a nonprofit, in, a car that keeps breaking down, whatever it is. It's just a problem. And just say, okay, you guys, you got 15 minutes to do some problem solving. But here's the instruction. So this is you and me, Ginny. So you're going to open your mouth and start problem solving. And I'm going to say, stop. Do it another way. And then you'll try and do your first step another way. And then then you say, okay, Gordon, it's your turn. And I'm saying, okay, so what this brings to me is like, I'm going to break the problem down, that it's like, is it the carburetor? Is it the battery? And you're going to say, stop, do it another way. So you're sort of attacking each other's, well, attacking is not the right word. You're challenging each other's default way of doing things and just saying, stop. Nope, you can't do that. Do something else. And then you're just keeping it going back and forth and back and forth. So if you've tuned in to enough of this conversation to remember to use your breath while you're doing that, you'll find it, that much better of an experience. But that may be too much to hold in mind at once, that, okay, I'm breathing out and I'm not doing what I normally do and I'm trying to solve this problem and the clock's running and boy, I really probably look real foolish in front of this person. But I'm trying to scramble. I'm trying to create a more real life environment where you're not just by yourself enjoying a sunset, because much of our daily life is not enjoying sunsets. It's problem solving. But I want to change how you approach that problem solving. I'm trying to induce this idea of whatever it is I normally do, whatever it is I normally do, whatever it is I normally do. No, not that, and not that, and not that, and not that. And I need a partner to help me with that, saying, no, Gordon, not that. Gordon, nope, not that.
Why does this sound like koan training?
Gee,
Gee. But
it's a great challenge.
It's a great challenge, and it really
sounds quick and immediate, and it hits. It has an impact.
Yeah.
I'm guessing for some people that would have an impact.
Yeah.
Just disrupt the reflex, disrupt the habit.
Listening to you, that sense of disruption is what really comes to the fore. Why is disruption so useful?
Oh boy. Well, it's back to this thing. It's like that inside my skin. I've spent 71 years sort of building this package. I've kind of assembled all the parts and pieces for accomplishing things in the world. And whatever I've accomplished in the scheme of things, it's kind of like nothing, As long as I try and say, well, it's me that's doing it. It's my own stuff. So disruption is so useful because it bursts the boundaries continually. You've heard me talk about this idea of saying, you reference koan training and how we keep saying, no, that's not the answer. No, that's not the answer. No, that's not the answer. And so there's a reflex reaction to that as of, oh God, I can't get this right. I don't, what's wrong with me? It's not this. And somehow for me, it's always been flipped on its head. It's like, wow, if I'm wrong, if my answer is wrong from this tiny little bundle of nerves and, flesh and bone, if I'm wrong, wow, what's right must be really big. It must be so huge that that's whatever is out there that's a yes is way what's better than what's inside of me that's a no. And so to me, that disruption has always served me, because it says this little thing that I can imagine or that I can articulate. Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah. But the really useful thing is way bigger than anything you got going on.
Oh, wow. I think I want to call it a wrap. That's really wonderful. What could you possibly add? We'll let the universe add the rest. How about that? This has been so fun. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah.
And we'll put this together and hope that it serves. Yeah.
Yep.